Hello, hello, virtual book club. It's Susie McMahon and friends. I am coming to you live from a location that may not have the strongest Wi-Fi, so please be patient if things pause or freeze, but we'll keep on going. Tonight, I pointed in the right direction. To the other side of the screen, we have virtual book club expert Francene Katzen joining us again from Virginia. Welcome, Francene.
Thank you, Susie.
You're welcome. And then down below, everybody, we have author Kimberly Brock. I just wanted to say welcome to Susie L. McMahon's virtual book club. We have been going since 2020, going strong, and we were just discussing how fun it is for all of us to meet authors and the communities that surround authors. When the readers and the authors get together, it's just fantastic. Kimberly, I'm going to let you say hi, and then I'm going to jump into your bio, and we'll kick off the evening. Welcome, Kimberly.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I've been waiting for this one since last April, so I'm really excited to be here.
I know. Thank you for your patience. That was one of the craziest things when I was going and we were getting authors referred and everything. I was like, oh no, I gotta figure out how to not have a backlog when somebody gets introduced. You know, when we have those surprise guests joining us. I wanted to tell everybody watching tonight, make sure that you give StreamYard permission to use your name. Otherwise, you're going to come up as Facebook user, and it makes things a little confusing when I'm trying to ask your questions. When you come on, I see people joining us tonight. Please let me know where you're watching from. Debbie Cooperman-Stone, hello. I'll say hi. So you guys, I'm going to start by reading Kimberly's bio. Kimberly Brock is the best-selling author of The Lost Book of Mardar, which was shortlisted for the prestigious Townsend Prize for Fiction and the River Witch, recipient of the Georgia Author of the Year Award. She is the founder of Tinderbox Writers Workshop and has served as a guest lecturer for many regional and national writing workshops, including at the Pat Conroy Literary Center, which we all love. A native of North Georgia, she now lives near Atlanta. Again, welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you.
So we have some people from Beaufort, some people from Grand Junction, Colorado, and somebody from San Diego, Debbie. So everybody, welcome. Francene, can you jump right in and ask Miss Kimberly a question, either directly to her or about her book?
I would like to welcome Kimberly. We're so glad you're here. I never get tired of talking about this book because I loved it. Please tell us and our listeners where the idea for this book came from and how that worked, how long it took you to write this book.
This book took me forever to write. It's a crazy story. I had written my first novel, and the internet was sort of new at the time, and I had two babies at home, and they would nap. They were 16 months apart, and so that was like precious time that I had to read, and I found the internet where you could it was like having a library at home. Mm-hmm. And I was doing some research and trying to come up with an idea for what I wanted to work on next, and I ran across this article about the Dare Stones, and it was a bit of this very obscure Georgia history that connected my home state to the mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke in North Carolina. And I loved that story. I remember learning about it when I was in like third or fourth grade, and I was this precocious little kid. So I was always into something I wasn't supposed to be into. So I liked the idea of this colony that disappeared, and maybe somebody just wasn't telling the truth or not telling us everything. So when I found that article about the Dare Stones, and we can talk about that history if you want to, I couldn't believe I didn't know anything about it, because my dad was this sort of amateur historian. We knew so much local history growing up, and we went on history tours on all our vacations, and that I did not know about that history in my home state really like sent all my bells and whistles off. So I started thinking about it then. My children are grown now. So that tells you how long I thought about it before I ever wrote it. And writing it, I would say I started dabbling with it 6 years, 3 years of really intense writing.
Wow.
Wow. That's one of the things that I absolutely love every time I talk to authors is I think so many of us out here in the reader world think that authors just write it and there it goes and then it's published and we've learned that some do. Some do. Well, I would like to follow up with a little bit more history about the stones. And how you uncovered all of it just a little bit deeper. Can you just talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So the Dare stones the first one was discovered in 1937, about 50 miles inland from where the Roanoke colony disappeared. And this fellow that was on vacation with his wife stopped on the side of the road, says he was looking for hickory nuts, and he trips over this big stone. And it has an inscription on it, and he can't read it, but it was the end of the Depression. And everybody's looking for a way to make a buck, and he thought it might be worth something. So he tosses it in his trunk, and they go on their way, on their trip. So this works out for you, right? This guy's on his vacation. And they wind up down here near Atlanta and go into Emory College. He takes the stone in, plops it down in front of the history professor there and says, "So what do you think? What do you give me for it?" And over the next couple of years, all of the experts that came and looked at it just sort of lost their minds because they thought it was Elizabethan English. They thought it was a message from a survivor of the lost colony. The initials on the stone were EWD, and they attributed that to the daughter of the governor of the colony, Eleanor White Dare, who is most famous for being the mother of Virginia Dare. Francene, Virginia history, right?
Yeah.
And so Emory wasn't sure. After enough people had looked at it, they just weren't sure. They wanted to invest their reputation in whether or not it was real or if it was a hoax. But the history professor was the son of the president of a small women's college north of Atlanta called Brenau University. And they bought the stone and took it there, and they did further research and searching for other stones and ended up finding over 40 of them that led on this kind of wild goose chase for how Eleanor had survived and the rest of the colonists had been massacred. There were only 7 survivors, and it had this kind of outlandish story that went with it. And a few years after all these stones were found, the Saturday Evening debunked them as a hoax. All but the first one. We still don't know, even to this day, whether it's authentic or not. And it's at the college and you can go see it. So I did. And when I saw it, I cried. And I thought, what is wrong with me? And I was so embarrassed, and I apologized to the poor little woman in the archive room. I mean, nobody ever goes to see this thing. And she must have thought I was nuts. And I was about halfway home trying to figure out why I was so upset. And I realized I was mad. I was really mad because her story had been lost twice. It was lost when the colony was lost. And then it was lost again because it was an embarrassment. She was a very inconvenient woman both times. And I just thought, if I was that little 19-year-old girl, she was 19 and 7 months pregnant when she got on the boat. And I thought, they wouldn't even let me get on an airplane pregnant, right. 7 months.
Right.
All I would have wanted was to be remembered. And that's what I was doing. And so the stone became important to me then for that reason.
Right. That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I want Francene to ask you a follow-up question, but I also wanted to read a few of the comments here. When we talked about how long it took you to write your book, we have people saying, Kimberly, thanks for sticking with it, which is, we all want to thank you for that. And then I'm going to ask this question real quick, and then Francene, follow up with your next question. Can you talk about where and how you wove any fictional characters and or plot into the historical record, Kimberly?
Well, I have a lot of readers who pick up this book and they think it's going to solve the mystery of the lost colony. And it really doesn't. We just don't know. There are a lot of theories. And they also will say, I really wish there was more about the lost colony or more about Eleanor. And I want to say, yeah, me too, because we just don't know. So in order to write a story based on Eleanor or her survival, I really had to make it up. It had to be fiction. And the choice that I made to set it at the end of World War II was dictated by the fact that I knew when that dare stone, the first dare stone, had the date 1591 carved into it. So let's say that's when Eleanor disappears into history. I knew that date, and I knew when it had been debunked as a hoax in 1942. And the question I really wanted to answer was, why would that matter to anybody? Who would it matter to? If your story is suddenly a hoax, who cares? And I thought the person that would care would have been her family. If somebody says, this is our family story we passed down for all of these years, then somebody says, nope, that's not true at all. What do you do with that? So I chose to have the fictional characters be women who had descended from Eleanor, who were living at that time, right at the end of World War II. So I had a mother and a daughter, and that daughter is saying, so Mom, who are we? Who are you? What does that make me? And is any of this true, like your daughters do? They put your feet to the fire. And so I think that's how I found the fictional voice, because I also thought that's probably what Eleanor was feeling like. The stones say she had a second child, a second daughter. And I thought, standing there at that precipice, at the edge of a whole new world, not knowing what's going to come next, what is this going to be for my daughter? And I thought a woman at the end of World War II would be facing the same thing, standing there with her 13-year-old daughter, because the world was changing.
Wow. I love it. Francene, you're up. Ask away. I love that, Kimberly. Thank you.
So did you write the book start to finish? Did you write it in chunks? And also, did you know how it was going to end?
So I am one of those freaks of nature. I start with the end. I always know the end. I start writing from an idea or a question or a theme until I can kind of hear a voice. And usually at that point, I know I write the end scene. And it doesn't always end up being exactly the same, but the point of it is there. And then when I know that, I start at the beginning. I know where it starts. And so then I kind of reverse engineer in between. And I have ideas for what I know is going to be in the book. And I do write fairly in order, I guess. But yeah, it's a weird, clunky business. And with this book, I wrote the whole manuscript set in 1942 and turned it into my agent. And she said, this is great. Now where's the rest? And I said, what do you mean? I sent her this huge book. And she said, well, where's Eleanor's story? Because I had not written that. And I fought her for about 6 weeks. I was afraid to do it. I told her it felt like I was stomping across graves in a graveyard. Like it felt so disrespectful to make something up. I didn't know. And I think that came from the fact that those 48 stones seemed kind of silly, the story that they gave her to me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to be disrespectful. I didn't want to do that again. But I woke up in the middle of the night one night and I sat straight up in bed because I could hear it in my head. And it wasn't what I had been trying to write or thinking I needed to write at all. And I started writing it on a notepad, and my husband sat up and said, are you okay? And I said, it's a mother. And he said, what? And I said, just go back to sleep. And what I was hearing was not a true story, but a fable. Like mothers will tell their daughters, because mothers don't tell you your whole family story, and they may embellish and they may tell you little bits here and little bits there when you need them. And sometimes you run out of time and you don't get all of it. You have to live with that. So Eleanor's tale came last, and I wrote it in about 6 weeks.
Awesome. I'm trying to let you be the feature person. And my little behind
It's
the scenes
okay.
is messing up a little bit. So I know that I asked you if you were going to if you would be willing to read an excerpt. To be honest with you, I can't remember your answer.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't care. Would you like me to read an excerpt?
Okay,
How much time do we have?
I'm so glad.
I
I would love for you to treat us to an excerpt from your novel. It's
Sure.
my favorite part of what we do. Go for it,
Well,
Kimberly.
I will just read from the beginning of The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. I've not actually, I don't think, read this for anybody. The prologue. The summer I turned 13, my mother took me into the forest to work a charm that was my right from birth. They say what happened there might have killed me. I think I might have killed her instead. I thought I would be like her and all the women before me in my mother's family. For generations, they'd come of age by inheriting a vision and learning of a myth, whispered from mother to daughter, but no vision had ever come. The charm that had been uttered for generations turned to poison in my hands, and when my mother died, the myth and all it meant went with her. The story I was left with is one I've never told. And the truth is, things had taken a wrong turn even before the trail faded beneath the palmetto fronds, flooding out into swampy ponds as the light failed over the wetland. First, Mama lost her sense of direction. And then, in the night, she lost her mind. And while I'd slept beneath the hush of tall pines, secure in her love, she deserted me. It was a wonder, people later said, that I found my way home, surviving the sucking mud and the creatures that might have devoured me. And in fact, when I ran into the yard the next morning, some thought I was a ghost. To my horror, so did my mother. She took one look at me and said, "Who are you, child? Tell me." I had no answer for her. My mother taught me that a story matters not because it's true, but because it's been told. And I don't know if I believe this. But I've been trying to find a way to tell myself the story of that night with my mama my whole life, in hopes that one day the ending will change. For while we both came home that day, the truth is both of us disappeared. Once there was a girl who went into the forest. Until now, I've tried to forget what happened. I'd never planned to go back to that place. But that was before I had a daughter of my own. Now she looks to me with the question all daughters are bound to ask their mothers: who are you? And I hear the echo behind that question: who am I? Even if I have no answer, I am still my mother's daughter, and so I will give to my own daughter the only story I know, in the hope that if I tell it well, she'll find the answers she needs. Once there was a girl who always took a dare. Once there was a girl who went to sleep and awoke someone else. Once there was a girl who could always find her way home.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
I don't have a daughter, but I am a daughter.
Yeah.
And that is it's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have some comments that say love that passage. Tim M. Brown said, "Ancestry matters. It shapes us and links us with our roots. We are born with a story embedded in our genetic makeup. Well done." Debbie Stone said, "I adored the mother-daughter story and development of the relationship in the book." So
we expect a lot of our mamas, and I think we kind of expect them to have some kind of magical power, some kind of magical answer they're going to give us to life, and that's a lot for mamas to carry around.
It is indeed. I just thought of something yesterday that I wish I could ask my mother and get a clear answer, but I'm not really sure she's clear and present to give me an answer. and that time might have passed, which is, I was really sad about that.
I understand that feeling. My mom has
Mhm.
dementia, had early onset dementia. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very sad, in and out. So I will have to kind of reconcile with that.
It is hard. It's little losses for a really long time.
Yes, it has been little by little. It's a piece by piece, and
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes wonder if that's worse than just a sudden loss.
Oh yeah.
You know, both of them
I
are
agree.
bad. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. Francine, can you ask Kimberly another question? And in a few moments, we might have Kimberly introduce a surprise guest, I think. So, Francine, go for it.
I know we could talk about this book all night, but I'm really curious to know are you working on something now for next year? When can we need another read from you?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
This is the first time I've ever had to write a book on deadline.
Oh.
So I'm more than mildly terrified that it's going to be awful because I usually take a long time. I'm not a fast writer. I write really slow and I can work all day long and still, I close the computer at night and I'm so frustrated I've not gotten farther. It takes me a long time to do a lot of writing in my head before it ever hits the page. But this was a 2-book contract. So I do have a new book coming. It's supposed to be in 2024. We'll see if I can finish it up. I am still writing about the Georgia coast with this, Appalachian girl comes to the coast kind of thing. I don't know why that's my thing right now. I think I really like contrast. I like the idea that you have people. First of all, I grew up in North Georgia, and you wouldn't have even known Savannah existed except for my dad loving history, right? And so I love that you put these people together and they realize, oh, we're not so different after all. We're all dealing with the same things and the same folklore and the same. Anyway, I'm working on another book that's on the Georgia coast. It's very folksy, folk tales. It's set in 1959. It's a fictional town called St. Constant, and Cumberland Island is a backdrop for that. It's not set on Cumberland Island. And of course, 1959, the big Dungeness fire happens. So that's part of the background.
Awesome.
No title, none. No title. It's making me
crazy. And no cover, no title.
It's just still barely a book.
You've got 6 months for the rest of the year. I have complete confidence you'll get it done.
I do too, and I would love to, if we're still going strong, I would love to have you come back. My most favorite thing to do now is to have somebody that we featured in 2020 or maybe 2021, and now their second book is coming out, and we're helping with that. Like Susan Zarenda, she's got her next novel.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be great.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And then John
Worley. Buford too.
Yes, ma'am. We need to talk about that. So in another conversation, we got to get Francene back to Buford as well.
Yeah.
We may have a whole trip paid for. Anyway, that's a long story.
I want to come back in the worst kind of way. 2022 trip was one of the highlights of my year. So bummed to miss this year. So that'll be fun.
So it's about that time, I think, to bring on another wonderful author, and I can't wait to chat with your future featured author, Emily. Excuse me, I just said her name, Kimberly. Will you please introduce Emily Carpenter? I'm bringing her on. Hi, Emily.
Hello, Emily Carpenter.
How's everyone?
I'm so glad you're here. Look how pretty your hair looks.
I did it today just for you, Kim.
I'm gonna read your bio because I think it's a good bio.
Okay.
Emily Carpenter's bio on her website. Woo! Is it really long? Wait.
You don't have to read that whole.
It's really long.
Don't read that
Where's
whole.
your short one you used to have? Yeah, we know one another a little bit if I'm getting on to you about your bio. Emily Carpenter is another Atlanta-based author. She writes Southern Gothic suspense that just curls my toes, and we speak such a wonderfully weird Southern creepy language, and it's just beautiful. And I stalked her for about 1.5 years before I made her promise to be my friend forever. How many books do you have now? 5?
At 5.
5. And she's just sold a new book, and I'm super excited about it and so jealous of the title I could die. I may steal it. If I can use it, if I can tell my publisher before it comes out, right?
No, don't take it. I love my
Welcome, Emily Carpenter.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And yeah, the title is Gothic Town.
Woo! God, I love that.
That's on record. And if they try to make me change the title, they may have a bit of a battle, but you know how those things go, right, Kim?
Yep.
We don't always get the title we want.
Emily, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Susie. Nice to meet you. That's Francene. Katzen.
Glad to meet
So,
you.
one of the things that I love to do at this point is let Francene and I sit back, and Emily and Kimberly ask each other questions. So we might want to start just for an overview, Emily, of whatever book you would like us to feature. Of that book, and then the two of you ask each other a question, and then Francine and I'll sit back and take a nap. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna sit here. We're gonna sit here and listen intently. But I love this part because it's author to author, and we're just kind of listening in. But Emily, go ahead and give us an overview of what you would like us to read.
Okay. Yeah. So my latest book is called Reviving the Hawthorne Sisters, and it's so funny because this book came out in 2020, and recently I did a book club about it, and some of the women were asking me some rather detailed questions, and I was like, I don't remember. I was like, what do you think about that? But Reviving the Hawthorne Sisters is about a woman whose grandmother is kind of a old-timey but well-known, somewhat famous tent revivalist, kind of ex-faith healer who had a really big following back in the 40s and 50s. And so she's kind of really sort of morphed her career and is still rather well regarded and famous. So her granddaughter Eve is making a documentary about her as kind of her last project in the family business. And then she is going to leave because she has known a secret about her grandmother, the faith healer, for many years, and just really doesn't want to be a part of this organization or kind of telling some of the falsehoods that she's had to tell to keep up that family facade. So while she's making this documentary, some things come rather violently to light, that there's the possibility that her grandmother might not only have been a liar and a con woman, but also a murderer. So she has
like at Francene. Francine's falling out.
So she quickly has to sort of wrangle this documentary crew, and they have to figure out the truth about what's happened before the whole family legacy comes crashing in. And yeah, it's mainly set in Alabama. We go from Florence, Alabama to Birmingham to Tuscaloosa. And then the story alternates with the story of her grandmother, who came up through being an orphan in the 1930s, and how she kind of insinuated herself into this particular business of being a tent evangelist person. So anyway, that's the book.
It sounds so interesting, Emily. I can't wait. You and I have to talk via email or something. Kimberly, will you introduce us and figure out? Hopefully, we can feature you quicker than when I first met Kimberly. I'm like, okay, next April, next May, a year later is when we got her on here.
That's fine.
But I'm excited. I'm excited. So, Kimberly or Emily, ask Kimberly a question, any kind of question.
Okay, Kimberly, what are we gonna name this book you're working on?
Oh my God. Look, anybody can message me with an idea. How about that? It has to have that folklore flavor. It needs to taste like folklore, right?
Yeah.
And Americana and a collection of stories, because each of the characters in this book is sort of their story is their own folklore, and each of them has a relationship to something that's coming out of the folklore around them, like a song that's been passed in a family, or particularly like Appalachian folklore stories that are in a collection that one of the women is kind of haunted by. And there's photography, like spirit photography and ghost stories in the book. So it's all folklore, and I cannot think of a good title for it. It's driving me crazy.
We're gonna come up with something great. So Kimberly and I have a future coffee day planned to talk about this, but
you're the best at this.
Well, it's no pressure when it's not my book.
I know. I know. That's true.
Also, I think we need to we should loop in Taylor Swift, because she's,
I know, for real. Look, I look at that. I've looked at those the cover art, and I look at that all the time. I'm not like huge into the music, but the vibe.
Yeah, she's very good at getting everything in an album kind of very on brand and that vibe of.
I got no brand, baby. I'm not a brand.
I know. So speaking of brand, what is your general feeling about the art part of writing a book and creating characters and a story and being married to the business part of having to appeal to an audience or sell it to bookstores or that kind of thing? What drives you?
The art part. The business part of it is soul sucking for me. I love this part. I like the part where you get to talk story with other writers and with readers. I'm a teacher. I was a teacher. And so what I long for is that sharing of stories, and it becomes something outside of you. The business side of it just interrupts all that for me. It takes me out of my headspace where I'm not just living in my fun little imaginary world. I'll sit down at dinner at night right now while I'm working hard on this book, and my husband will say, "You're really quiet tonight." And I'll say, "What do you want me to talk about? Everything I've thought about all day long, I just made up. You don't want to know. None of it's real." But the business feels that way to me. It's like it's going, hello, 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 and I'm just trying to work.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And do you have that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I just wanted to read a comment from our audience. T.M. Brown says, read Caroline Miller's A Lamb in His Bosom, Pulitzer Prize, Southern author, 1936 era, all about South Georgia life. May help with the title.
Yep, he's right. That's a good one. I need to go back and read it again.
Very good recommend.
Yeah.
Emily,
you're like a TV interview. You should just do this. I'm just going to sit
Yeah.
back. Go ahead.
I told you that was like a couple of years ago. I was like, I want to become the Oprah of interviewing authors. Like,
You should.
I love that. It's my favorite thing to like be in conversation or, pick people's
Totally.
brains.
And we talk about this all the time. And I think we should do it from your writing cabin.
Okay.
Is that where you are now, Emily? You look like you're at a cabin.
See, tell them where it is.
So you can kind of see it's got that little cabin
Feel.
look to it.
Oh, nice.
So is that in Atlanta or are you in the mountains?
No, I'm just north of Atlanta in a suburb called Roswell.
I can sit and hit her house, so we get in trouble.
We're close.
So Kimberly and Emily and Francene, I went to the University of Georgia, and I graduated from Chamblee High School. So and I have family in Roswell. So I just want to let you know I totally understand who you are.
And do you live in Denver now?
I'm half and half between Denver, Colorado, and Beaufort, South Carolina. So
yeah, you suck.
Yeah, that's a really good. That's a good,
low country. You got the low country and the high country.
Oh yeah.
Well, okay. I'm gonna change gears here for a second, and I'm gonna ask each of the authors a question. Then Francene's gonna ask a follow-up. And we're almost out of time because we're having so much fun. So, Emily and Kimberly, I haven't asked this question in a long time, but I was thinking about it a lot today when I met a bunch of local countrymen in Turks and Caicos. And we talked about how fast 2020 shocked us all into a different mindset about our lives and about how we look at the world and things like that. We feel like we're way beyond it, but I feel like we still are reacting to in our lives about could that happen again, et cetera, et cetera. So what I want you to answer is, how did COVID in 2020 affect you as an author? And how do you think you are going to possibly integrate that into your future writings? We'll have Kimberly go first.
How did it affect me as an author? I have to be honest and say it really did not. Not as an author. I was in a space of time where I was just starting to think about what I was going to write next. And Eleanor, well, no, it did, I guess, affect it a little bit. Eleanor had gone out on submission, and things just became such an uproar. I actually asked my agent to pull the book, and we took it off submission for several months just to kind of let the temperature of everything settle down a little bit so we could kind of decide what we wanted to do and if I was really ready to be in the fray right then with it if somebody did pick it up. And the rest of the time, though, I enjoyed that quiet. Emily will tell you, you can't drag me out of my house. So, I was like, "Whoa, this is good. Groceries are being delivered, and I don't even feel bad about it." And we were very safe. We were very fortunate in our situation. My husband was already working from home most of the time anyway, and our kids came home from college, and we just hunkered down. And the only thing I worried about was eggs, and my parents. So. Personally, I was good, and I think that made it easy for me to start thinking about writing the next thing. Because I think when you feel safe in your reality, in the real world around you, you're able to be creative. For me, that's true. If I don't feel safe in my situation, I'm not one of those people that disappears into my creativity. It shuts me down. So in a weird way, COVID was very insular and comfortable for me. I felt safe. And so my brain was very creative.
Yeah. I had the same experience in terms of.
I know. I read like 3 books you wrote in 3 weeks.
In creatively. Well, I will start by saying I was very fortunate not to have, I mean, I had one of my sons in high school still at home, but he, for the most part, could manage the online school without a lot of me supervising. So the same thing, I felt pretty safe, and
Yeah.
my husband was still working, thank God. And I felt just a creative explosion, and I wrote a lot of book. I wrote a book kind of outside of my genre that was a little paranormal, that I really loved, and then I wrote 3 contemporary novels, like category romances, that I self-published under a pen name, which was something it was completely out of my like skill set, but I love romance books, and it just was really fun. And it felt like a low stakes endeavor, it just felt like something really, really fun. So creatively, it was great. I think professionally for me, it was a lot tougher because it was just some time that I was going through some stuff with my agent. And so I ended up having to part ways with her and parted ways with my publisher at the time. So there was some upheaval there, but I think like on the creative side, I was just having so much fun and feeling really free that I don't know. It was a scary time, but also I did a lot of walking and listened to a lot of audiobooks.
Mhm.
So that felt like a, a very contemplative time.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to share this one comment from Marlene. And Marlene is totally spot on. If 2020 did not happen, would we be on this show right now? And the answer is absolutely not, because I started and she was with us, and I feel bad because she had to leave. But the very first featured author in our virtual book club was Rebecca Dwight Bruff with Trouble the Water. And she actually gave me the idea, like I figured let's do Facebook group. And there those big guys that we're up against right now, our best friends over there, they were developing their show at the same time. I don't consider this a show. It's just my virtual book club. And when Rebecca said, "What are you going to do next?" I said, "I don't know." And she goes, "Well, why don't I refer you to another author?" I was like, "Well, that works." And then I've just let that go the course now for 3 years.
Yeah.
Our second author was Jeffrey Blunt, phenomenal, Emancipation of Evan Walls. And I trust you, Kimberly, to introduce us to Emily. I'm not going to go, "Oh no, let me see what Emily's all about. I love her already." You know what I mean? It creates its own life. So Marlene, that's totally correct. Oh, sorry. Francene, will you ask one last question, kind of to wrap it up? Before she asks, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And I'm going to be in touch with you, Emily, about getting you on our schedule. But Francene, ask that question, and then everybody can do a follow-up closing comment, and we'll sign off for the night.
Thank you, Emily, for being here, and Kimberly, so much. This has been so fun. What do you all like to read? Emily, I think you said you like to read romance, so you go first, and then Kimberly. What's on your agenda?
Yeah, I write suspense, but I love to read everything. Right now, I'm on a kind of right now. My favorite author is Emma Donoghue. She wrote Room years ago, but everything she writes is different. Like recently I've loved her Haven and Pull of the Stars and The Wonder, and I just think she's just brilliant. And my other recent favorite is an author called Ian Reid, who does kind of sci-fi, but it's very like emotional. And he has a book called We Spread, and I'm thinking of ending things. And foe. So that's those are my two kind of obsessions right now.
Okay, great. Kimberly?
What about you, Kimberly?
Well, I like weird books, but I also like regional authors too. You guys know Robert Gwaltney. Emily
Yes.
and I are buddies with Robert Gwaltney. Cicada Tree was wonderful. He's working on something right now, and he's let me read just a little bit of it. And I told him I couldn't read any more of it, but because it depresses me, it's so much better than what I'm writing.
No, not true.
Oh my God. I have to say, though, even before the Pulitzer, I've been telling everybody I know about Demon Copperhead from Barbara Kingsolver. I come from the hills. I know you can't hear it listening to me talk, but I get those people, and I thought it was a wonderful answer to some of the things that have come out in the past decade about Appalachia. So I really appreciated that. Lee Smith has a new book out. She's written a new book called Silver Alert, and I have it. I'm getting ready to read it, and I'm excited. I almost don't want to read it because I don't want it to be over. I loved her books. I love anything Silas House writes. I love William Kent Kruger's books. We share a literary agent, and I'll read anything he writes. And then I loved that strange book that came out a few years ago called Circe. Madeline Miller. And I sometimes pick it up and just open it and read, just to read the language. She's that way for me, and Alice Hoffman, anything she writes. Sometimes just pick something up and just read it for the language. So
yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for all that. I try to type everything in. If you have a chance, Kimberly and Emily, if you look in the show notes, the comments, I didn't type in all of the authors that you recommended. If you could go in and just make a few comments, because then it'll stay in Facebook posterity for 30 days or whatever they give us. I don't know. But so this has been going live on in the virtual book club on my Facebook page, and also on YouTube. I will send everyone here in our YouTube link for you to share it however you want, if you choose to. And I just want to say thank you, Francene, for helping me out again in case my Wi-Fi totally went out and you guys had to operate behind the scenes. Kimberly, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. I do feel like I knew you before we met tonight. And Emily, it is an awesome honor to meet you this evening. So I look forward to continuing the conversation down the road.
Thanks for having me.
You're
welcome.
Thank you. This is so fun.
I'm going to go ahead and sign off for tonight because I have family dinner waiting, and I will be back on the virtual book club later this week to talk about what's next. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Kimberly, Emily. It was great. Thanks. See you on social media or in Richmond.
Yes, ma'am.
Or in Richmond. All right.
I'm not gonna forget that, Kimberly.
Good for you. I'm ending the broadcast now. Bye.
Okay. Bye.